Welcome to this review of the One Way UK Daily Devotionals for the 10th to the 14th of January. We've reached that stage in the story of Jonah where the sailors are saying to him, "Who are you?" And because he's been discovered sleeping below decks in this middle of this storm, which is threatening the survival of everybody on board the ship, and indeed the ship itself, of course. And Jonah answered, and he said the following, and this is what we read from Jonah, and this is actually the 9th and 10th verses. "I'm a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land." Then he told them that he was running away from the Lord. The sailors were terrified when they heard this. "Oh, why did you do it?" they groaned. Now, the point I want to pick up on this is not the fact that the sailors were terrified, well, at least not first, but the fact that Jonah came straight out and said who he was. "I'm a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven." You know, it just reminds me that whatever circumstances that we're in, whether they're good, or, as in Jonah's case, whether they are very serious and bad, there is always the opportunity to testify to the living God. And Jonah did that quite simply, because he said, "I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land." He didn't just leave it as, well, I worship the Lord, the God of heaven. He added, "who made the sea and the land." And in a sense, you see, he was saying to the sailors, well, I worship the God who created all this and who's in charge of all this. And he came straight out with it, and he was open about it, and he took the opportunity to declare. And we're told in the New Testament to always be ready to give a reason for the hope that is within us. And that hope, of course, is in Jesus. So it's a good thing to remember. And why were they horrified? They were horrified because they understood the principle of disobedience, and that disobedience is not a good thing, and that obedience is a good thing. And the fact that this man was disobeying his God, well, no wonder they were in the terrible trouble they were in. On Tuesday, we moved on to something which actually is very sobering. And if you like, it underscores possibly, most martyrdoms that have ever taken place, Christian martyrdoms, that is. And the storm was getting worse and worse and worse, and the sailors asked Jonah, because they perceived that he was the one who had the answer, because he was the one disobeying his God, and they said to him, "What should we do to stop this storm? What should we do to you to stop this storm?" They really, they were clued into this. And Jonah's reply, well, we'll discover, it actually shocked them. He said, "Throw me into the sea, and it will become calm again, for I know that this terrible storm is all my fault." That is an example of the courage of faith. Jonah knew he was responsible for the storm, but he hadn't had the advantage of reading his book like we have. And he didn't know what was going to follow, but he had no doubt as to what the sailors should do. Throw me into the sea. And we need to be under no misapprehension that that was certain death. They weren't near shore. I doubt if Jonah could swim, and in any event, very little point in doing it, but only prolong the agony. But this is where he comes to the crunch, and his faith rises up within him, and he says to them quite plainly, "Yep, this is a bad deal, but do it." That is the courage of faith. And it makes Those little, that embarrassment that comes upon us about testifying about Jesus to other people, it makes it all seem a bit silly, doesn't it, compared to what Jonah went through. However rough the coffee room is at work, it's not going to be as rough as that sea. So how about it? How about us both agreeing to gird up our loins and operate in the courage of faith in telling people about Jesus and what he's done for us? That's all Jesus ever asked us to do. We don't have to put out some great doctrinal spiel. That's the last thing that Jesus wants us to do. He doesn't want us to do that at all. What he wants us to do is to tell people quite simply what he's done for us. We move on, and it's very interesting that the response to the sailors to what Jonah said, and that response was to row even harder for the shore. In other words, they had an acute idea of the sanctity of life. These were moral men, I believe. I mean, from the story, they were moral men. They didn't take the easy route and say, okay, Jonah, you say over the boards and throw him overboard. No, they didn't. They persisted in battling the storm because they did not want to disregard the sanctity of life. And I think that speaks very highly of them. And for us, of course, it means, are we also prepared to take that stance and never let our anger and distress drive us into the sort of frenzy that we've seen not only in this country but in other countries where people are lynched, etc., etc. But they cried out to the Lord, and they said, "O Lord," they pleaded, "don't make us die for this man's sin, and don't hold us responsible for his death, because it isn't our fault. O Lord, you have sent this storm upon him for your own good reasons." Now, there's no set way, I have discovered, for an individual to meet God. I've met some people who've read the Bible and become Christians, others who've read a pamphlet that somebody's put out about Christianity and become Christians, others who've been challenged by Christians, others who've responded and walked down to the front to an altar call, others who've put up their hand at a meeting. I've met people who've done it all sorts of ways. And you see, there are people who will put their mind to really exploring all what the different religions have, and they will then perhaps come to an understanding about Jesus. And there are others who see something in the lives of their friends or acquaintances that they want themselves. And it may be nothing more than just a hint of calmness or peace in that person's life that they don't have themselves. And there are those who are faced with a crisis who cry out to God. And it reminds me of a friend of mine who cried out in desperation. She cried out, "God, if you're there, help me." 30 years later, he's still doing that. Friday, we moved to something fantastic. The sailors eventually pick up Jonah, throw him into the raging sea, and the storm stopped at once. It didn't just calm down, it stopped at once. Now the sailors were awestruck by the Lord's great power when this happened. And they offered him a sacrifice and vowed to serve him. What must it have been like to be a member of the crew? What must it have been like? Along with the rest of them, we would have cried out to this man's God for mercy at two levels. First, that we don't die because of any wrong that this weird dude has done to us. And second, that we're not to be held responsible for his death. And then, having chucked this guy overboard, the storm stopped at once. Is it any wonder they were awestruck by the Lord's great power, offered a sacrifice and vowed to serve him? What they had discovered was that obedience brings blessing. And that, as they used to say, right quickly. God bless you. Have a great week. May you discover the blessings of obedience. Have a great weekend, I should say, rather than a great week. Have a great weekend. Well, you can have a great week as well next week as well. Why not? And we'll meet again next week and have a look to see where the daily devotionals have taken Till then,